For more than 4 decades, Papua New Guinea was my home base, to cover some incredible stories, from natural disasters to political coups and civil wars.
Sean Dorney on Manus Island for ABC News.
I even got to captain the National Rugby League team.
Sean Dorney sends a long pass to London, and it's a try for Papua New Guinea.
Now I'm living back in Australia and facing my toughest assignment yet, trying to beat a deadly disease. But while I still can, I'm determined to show you the Papua New Guinea that few Australians get to see, and a place that I have come to love. For over 40 years, Papua New Guinea has defined my life. I've known it since before independence in 1975, as a reporter, husband and a father. I married a proud Papua New Guinean, Pauline Nare, the daughter of a chief. And we're heading back to her remote home village, Tulu, on, of all places, Manus Island. Today, though, it feels bittersweet. The thing is, I've got motor neurone disease and have trouble walking, let alone getting out of a boat. Eventually, my whole body will shut down. I may have just 2 years left to live. But this rotten disease is not going to stop me from soaking up the embrace of my extended family. Over the years, I've always loved coming back here to Pauline's village. This may be the last time, but the thing that is so good about coming back here is you actually get to meet the Papua New Guineans who live this village lifestyle. 80% of Papua New Guineans still live in their villages. And when you come to a village like this, you see the resilience of the people. They look after themselves, they feed themselves, they get the fish from the sea, they get the food from the gardens. And this is the real strength that Papua New Guinea has. And it's one of the reasons I love the place.
It was a completely different lifestyle. A lifestyle in which I think many of us always sort of just took for granted. Walking to school, walking back. I had the type of freedom that I wish I would provide to my grandchildren. It's a very idyllic lifestyle.
The economists say PNG has high unemployment and widespread poverty, but there's no hunger here and everybody works. I much prefer the term subsistence affluence. Australians mostly associate Manus with the offshore detention of asylum seekers. To me, though, it is a place of joy, famous for its suggestive dancing. Missionaries did their best to ban it, but they failed. After I saw it first, back in the 1970s, it became my signature party trick. I'm no longer up to its more vigorous moves, but even with a walking stick, one can but try. To get a sense of what the future may hold for PNG, I figure a visit to the local primary school is a good place to start. My nephew Alex is the headmaster here. I'm so pleased to be here. You kids, you're the future of this country. My wife started her schooling here, and Pauline went on to become the first girl to work for the NBC in Radio Manus. She was the first radio announcer, and then she went to Port Moresby and she met me. So we got married in 1976. We've got 2 children and 3 boo-boos, 3 grandchildren now. Alex is an exceptional teacher, with his students at previous schools topping the province.
My hope for the school here is to see the students excelling academically, producing better results, seeing most of them going to high schools.
One positive development, the number of girls going to school has doubled in recent years. Work hard, study hard, but if you fail, just keep going. I went to university to do economics, and I failed every subject in my first year university because I concentrated too much on playing rugby league. But I kept going, and I got a job with the ABC, and eventually I became one of the ABC's foreign correspondents. One of PNG's most precious resources is its vast tropical forests. They're in danger elsewhere, but here so far they're being preserved. 2 beautiful rivers, Yiri and Ossiu, define the boundaries of Pauline's people's land. They're pristine. There are crocodiles here, and lining the banks, sago trees, one of the stable sources of food here. There are other trees, of course, tropical hardwoods much prized by the logging industry. The spokesman for the Tulu Conservation Group, Otto Ch'on, tells me they've seen what's happened elsewhere.
We have a village nearby us, Red Village, where there is a logging company operating in the meantime or at the moment. There have been talks here, or we have been discussing if they could come in to log our area, but so far we have not agreed. We have decided not to engage them.
Because there's been a lot of damage in other places.
That's right. Back there in their village, they almost lost all the trees.
A world away from Tulu, the capital, Port Moresby, is bursting at the seams. With a population of upwards of 1 million people, it has grown enormously since I first arrived as a young journalist 44 years ago. Crime was already an issue then, but these days it's worse, and security is a growth industry. This is the ABC's Port Moresby Bureau, from where I covered a multitude of stories. There was the volcano that destroyed much of Rugby, the horrific tsunami that killed 2,500 people in the West Sepik province, political crises that regularly saw prime ministers thrown out through motions of no confidence, and the longest ongoing tragedy, the 10-year Bougainville Civil War. Sir Julius Chan tried to end that by hiring African mercenaries through a British company, Sandline International.
I cannot put up with corruption.
But the PNG army rounded them up and booted them out. I was booted out too, deported from PNG in retaliation for an ABC story the government objected to. But they let me back, and 6 years later, I was given a gong, an NBE. There used to be 4 full-time Australian correspondents based here. Now, it's down to just 1. The ABC's Eric Torchek Eric, in 1984, the government decided to boot me out of here over a story relating to the Irian-Jaian border. You've been threatened with deportation, haven't you?
Yes, I have the letters I can show you, hand-delivered deportation letters over the student shootings in 2016 and the subsequent political crisis. Corruption allegations about the Prime Minister have been big news for a number of years, and there was enormous sensitivity about them.
I feel it's crucial that Australians are told about what's going on in our nearest neighbour and former colony.
The death toll is expected to rise from Monday's earthquake in Papua New Guinea.
Families, homes and gardens were swallowed up by the ground when the powerful earthquake shook these mountains. As you can see, this moonscape just appears, and there were people living there, and that was their food gardens, their pigs. Everything was in this area that is now just completely disappeared. It's been buried.
It actually appalls me that the Australian media in general has not paid the attention to this disaster that it should have done.
This highway goes towards the quake epicentre. It's one of many roads that...
Eric has since moved to a new posting, but says this has been the best job he's ever had.
It is one of the most interesting countries in the world, and the amazing thing about it is that it's accessible. You know, people are so welcoming. They want to show you their culture. They want to discuss the changes that are happening in their country, because as people like to say, my grandfather was a cannibal. And now, you know, I am on Facebook, and my cousin flies a plane, you know, and my brother's an engineer. You know, I mean, where else in the world do you find things like that?
Right now, Port Moresby is preparing to host world leaders at the APEC summit in November. It's a huge deal for PNG. Australia and China appear to be in competition over who is going to pay the most to help make it happen. You can hardly move in Moresby for the Chinese roadworks. I suspect the new ABC correspondent will be spending a lot of time reporting on China's increasing influence. But Prime Minister Peter O'Neill says China's interest is welcome.
There seems to be some concern in Australia at the moment about China and not only Papua New Guinea but the rest of the Pacific. Is there a reason why Australia should be a bit worried about China's influence?
Well, firstly, we have no security arrangements with China. Ours is business. If Australia stops doing business with China, we will stop doing business with China. But I think everybody's doing business with China. We have to continue to export our resources like oil and gas and copper and gold to China like Australia and everyone else.
Papua New Guinea is very fortunate to be part of the APEC process. These are clear benefits from the support that we are receiving, and China is the biggest supporter of our country.
It's not China that preoccupies most people here. They're more interested in the footy. In a country that speaks 860 distinct languages, rugby league is a great unifying force. To look at me now, you might not believe it, but I had great success as a halfback in the 1970s.
Dorney sends a long pass to Labi, to Hooker John Wagambe, to Buboy, and it's a try for Papua New Guinea.
I played 5 matches for the national side and had the great honour of being elected captain by my teammates in my final game. Pauline was not so impressed the first time she saw me play.
I was so shocked, and I ended up sitting in the ladies' toilet for the rest of the game because I was just shaking, thinking, do they call this sport? This is not sport. This is a bunch of dogs fighting over chicken bones.
Along with marrying Pauline, being a past Kumul captain has given me a profile in this country that still opens a lot of doors.
This is your place, this is your country.
Especially when I want to breach sensitive topics like the so-called Pacific solution with PNG's top politicians. Peter O'Neill says he doesn't regret allowing Australia to use the Manus Naval Base as a processing centre.
If I did not offer the solution, there will be certainly more deaths of children and all the people on boats who were going to Australia. The boat traveling and smuggling of people from Indonesia and other parts of Asia to Australia would not have stopped. So we offered it as a humanitarian effort to try and stop that.
Back on Manus, the remaining asylum seekers are now free to roam around the provincial capital. But none have ventured as far as Pauline's people's land. To my surprise and delight, Pauline's brother Bernard, now paramount chief of Tulu's 9 clans, has decreed that I be initiated as a chief of his and Pauline's clan, the Pitterpuak. This is a real honour. It's never been done before for an outsider. Augustin, the clan spokesman, seemingly berates Pauline for having left the village. But then he welcomes us back. These things, the Manus bags, the shells and the dog's teeth, are traditional currency. Lewa below me, Amy beat ya. I'm so happy, and the best thing I ever did in my entire life was meet this one here. Pauline. She has been the greatest wife you could imagine. I perhaps have not been the best husband. It has been a wonderful thing for me to have visited the village, stayed here over the years a number of times, but also being married to Pauline has given me an understanding of Papua New Guinea that other reporters do not have. And so I would just like to thank everyone here for being so friendly and so happy, and also for laughing when I try and do the Manus dance.
I'm a Papua New Guinean, and I'm Manusian, and I'm a Pitterpuak woman. And being a Pitterpuak woman is my identity. It's very important to me, and it's a nothing to everyone out there, but for me, it's my status. It flows in my veins. Everything up here is about the tribe that I was born into.
In PNG, most villages have one of these. They call them a string band. Tulu's best string band composed this song about Pauline and me and the ABC. Pauline, though, keeps my feet firmly planted. She's definitely not one to join all the others in telling me I'm a great bloke.
Ah, yeah. Conniving, never home. Yeah, forgets people's birthdays. You know, yeah, it's never considerate. I believe that I married down instead of up.
You did. I mean, you come from the landowning clan, the people who own so much of the land here, and your father was the chief.
Yeah, no, Dad wasn't happy. Dad wasn't happy. He said, no, you're not marrying anyone from outside of Manus, and definitely you're not marrying a white man.
But when we did get married,
yeah,
and I paid the bride price,
yes,
I always felt very welcomed in the village. So did someone convince him?
I did. I told him that he should be thankful that you actually had gone and taken every penny that you had in the bank and given it to him.
One of the great things about our relationship is that Pauline will always be a Papua New Guinean and I will always be an Australian. If only there were more relationships like ours, then the relationship between the two countries might be a hell of a lot better.
Our fathers never met, but I'm sure they would have hit it off. In fact, they were in New Guinea at the same time. It was the Second World War, and Manus was known as the Admiralty Islands.
Striking suddenly in the southwest Pacific, General MacArthur leads combined sea, air and land forces against the Admiralty Islands, just north of New Guinea.
The Americans took Manus back from the Japanese. Pauline's father had been put to work as forced labour building an airstrip.
The airstrip and the landscaping were all done by the natives.
My father too ended up in PNG during the war as a doctor with the Australian Army. This is some actual footage of him tending to the wounded in a jeep.
Allied doctors worked unceasingly in fever-laden heat.
He had been captured by the Germans on Crete, but incredibly, after escaping from his prisoner of war camp, he made his way back to Australia and then came up here to face the Japanese. The Pacific War took a lot of Australian lives. At the Burman War Cemetery just outside Port Moresby, there are more Australian soldiers buried in the one place than anywhere else in the world.
Really, it was in defence of Australia that those guys died during the Second World War here. I was there that day at Kokoda when Keating got down and kissed the ground and then said this place should be more significant to us than Anzac Cove.
When Kokoda was recaptured and the enemy driven out, the immediate threat of a battle for Australia was averted.
The Japanese got to within 10 kilometres of here, the southern end of the Kokoda track. They were just 60 kilometres from Port Moresby. My father's war in New Guinea came a bit later, after the Japanese were pushed back to the other side of these mountains.
He had a heroic war, actually. He got the Distinguished Service Order, the DSO, for bravery, for a time when they got cut off for 3 days. The unit he was with, and they had to repel the Japanese, and he had to look after all the wounded. And he told me at one stage that they couldn't use any lights, so at night when anyone was wounded, he had to feel their wounds with his hands and try and bandage them up.
45,000 Australians have walked the Kokoda track in the past decade.
Can I ask any of you guys, why you're doing it?
And my great uncle was killed in one of the beachhead battles in late 42, early 43. Actually, I think he died in 43. And so I'm the first family member to come and see his grave at Bamana today, and walk the track.
My father was a doctor with the field ambulance. His weapon of choice, he told me, was an Owen gun, which he had strapped to his back. Yeah. As a doctor. How long is it going to take him?
9 days. For us today would just be a short half day. It's to, shall we say, break people in gently.
It's terrific to see these young Australians, taking on the Kokoda track and walking along it. But one of the things I'd like to see is Australians taking far more interest in Papua New Guinea beyond just the Kokoda experience, because our relationship with Papua New Guinea, we ran the place for 70-odd years, but so many Australians have no idea these days what's going on up here.
Despite the strong tribal traditions, the major Christian religions remain hugely influential in PNG. Of a Sunday, almost everyone seems to go to church. My mother would have approved. For many years, she went to a Catholic Mass every single day.
Lord Jesus, 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 here I come, stop, come, stop, come, stop, what I knew. Long sana, long life, very long
Pauline's people are also committed Catholics, and some fervently believe faith can rid me of motor neurone disease. They are carrying this cross to where they will pray for me to be healed. Back home in Brisbane, I have volunteered to help the scientists search for a cure for motor neurone disease. But no amount of high-tech medicine can match this passion. So far, no change, but here's hoping. As we say goodbye, for me, perhaps for the last time, I can't help but feel that as someone who has spent so much of my career attempting to unravel the complexity and foibles of Papua New Guinea, I'm not that much closer to getting it right. We often hear about all the problems in Papua New Guinea, and there's no denying it has its share. But Australians deserve to know about the positives too. And if village life remains as joyful and fulfilling as it is here in Tulu, then that's a great thing. And I wish them all the best.
Sana